From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 2 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk. The McLaughlin Group is brought to you by MetLife. Guarantees for the if in life.
Issue 1, tour or detour?
The Olympic torch is now officially en route around the world. 23 stops. Athens, Beijing, Almaty, Istanbul, St. Petersburg, London, Paris, San Francisco, Buenos Aires, Dar es Salaam, Muscat, Islamabad, New Delhi, Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, Canberra, Nagano, Seoul, Pyongyang, Ho Chi Minh City, Hong Kong, Macau. The torch's flame is being held constant, even through protests, and even on long airplane point-to-point trips. Beijing calls the torch routing a quote-unquote harmonious journey. But that journey has become radically disharmonious. The torch is a target for demonstrators protesting against the human rights record of the Olympics host country, China. In London, a 31-mile torch procession was marred by pro-Tibetan campaigners. They jumped over barriers and tried to snatch away the Olympic symbol. In Paris, the mood was the same, with protesters even trying to snuff out the torch's flame. After Paris, the torch arced to San Francisco, its only stop in North America. The Golden Gate Bridge had been scaled and Free Tibet banners hung from its girders. The opening ceremony is almost 4 months away, August the 8th. Prime Minister Gordon Brown says he will not attend the opening ceremony for the same reason as other protesters.
Question, should President Bush boycott the opening ceremony of the Olympics in Beijing? Pat Buchanan.
No, he should not. He's the President of the United States. We have a tremendous state-to-state relationship with the Chinese. We're dealing with North Korean nuclear weapons, Iranian nuclear weapons. You're dealing with a Chinese currency, $1 trillion in trade deficits. We've got enormous things to deal with them on. John, I went to Beijing with Richard Milhous Nixon when Mao Zedong ran that place, and it was during the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution, which was a nationwide pogrom going on, and you had to deal with them because the United States was the first superpower on earth, and we have to have relationships. I do think these protests, as long as they're nonviolent, are good things to show the world what people, decent people, think of what's being done in Tibet, but the president should not boycott the Chinese Olympics. He should go as he said he would.
If this is an administration that couldn't let Bear Stearns fail, they can hardly offend China, which is holding so much of our debt, to expand on Pat's point. But look, I don't have a lot nice to say about this administration. I actually think they're playing this right. They're holding out the opportunity of applying more pressure on China, which they should do, and they're holding out the threat of boycotting the opening ceremonies, not the Olympics as a whole. And so there's still some time between now and August, and I think China is getting a taste of what might happen if this thing gets out of hand.
I heard that the real reason the protesters were trying to extinguish the torch was because it was contributing to global warming. Look, when we go back to the last big Olympic boycott, it was 1980, and the United States was a part of 60-plus nations that boycotted the Moscow Olympics in protest of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. The impact of that boycott was zero, had zero effect on Soviet behavior. Because, look, there were other levers that the United States could have pulled, and we did. The only effect that we had on Soviet behavior was stopping or banning the flow of high-tech imports into the Soviet Union. That's what affected the regime. Eleanor and Pat are exactly right. Chinese economy is growing 8 to 12% every year.
I didn't agree with Pat, though. I disagree.
But you were saying that the president should go for a whole host of reasons.
I said he should hold out the threat of not going, and he may well not
go.
But the interesting thing is this week Bush said, well, when I go to China, I talk about the Dalai Lama. I talk about religious freedom. Well, he's not getting much of a return on that talk. I mean, listen, he's already in a penny, in a pound, or in a couple $1 trillion to the Chinese. We've screwed up our Chinese relations from the get-go. We don't care about labor rights there. We don't care about, the corporations that Bush likes want to sell cell phones.
David, we've started along a course. They are a authoritarian, repressive regime. We've started along a course of engagement to try to change them. Now, maybe it might not work down the road, but you don't get off the road simply because they behave naturally in Tibet.
We're too far down the road to do anything about it because of those decisions.
And skipping an opening ceremony is hardly getting off the road.
Olympic athlete Jessica Mendoza of the USA's softball women's team opposes any kind of boycott against the Olympics and speaks for her fellow athletes, quote, "To take that dream away because of politics completely undermines what the Olympic Games stand for," unquote. So that's what we're all saying here. Is that right?
Well, no, I think we should use that.
You disagree with Jessica?
It's not politics. I mean, China is a repressive regime, and to sort of pretend this is not happening, you can't even report on what's going to be happening in China when you go there.
David, why then bring them into the WTO, for heaven's sakes?
The Olympic Committee made a mistake in the first place.
Okay, they made a mistake, but why would you do this?
Exit question. 4 years ago, the Olympics were awarded to Greece, and Greece was slow in constructing facilities. So the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, threatened just months before the start of the Games to move them to another city. This year, should the IOC tell China that unless China negotiates with the Dalai Lama and respects human rights in his country and for its own citizens, that the Games are off?
The IOC should stick to its knitting. It's got nothing to do with international politics. It should carry out the Olympics.
Well, that will condone what the Chinese do.
Well, look, what did they think they were getting when they gave Beijing the Olympics?
If the president shows up, will that not condone what the
president? No, it does not. Everybody knows where the United States stands. We allow protests against that thing, but the president should go.
Everybody doesn't know where the United States stands because we've taken both sides of the issue, just as some of us have on the show. But look,
you think the IOC should move?
I think the IOC does not have the spine to do it, even if it were so inclined.
What should it do in theory? In theory, should it do it?
Look, I think the Chinese are going to have to come to grips with this because what they're seeing now is nothing compared to what might happen when the Games themselves take place. I remember Tiananmen Square. I mean, if that happened again, what would that do to their pretenses to be part of the modern world?
This will endow China with legitimacy.
Look,
and it will.
John, this is what you get when you award the Olympic Games to a communist dictatorship. There is no mystery here. Those people.
You mean it was a mistake to start with?
But those people who oppose giving the Games to China should have made their criticisms known before the Games were awarded. China is not doing anything now that they weren't doing when the Games were awarded to them. It is unfair to try to pull the rug out from them now.
Should the IOC move the Games? Or threaten to move them to Sydney.
It's kind of like asking the mob to set up a charitable hospital. It just ain't going to happen. Right. I mean, they're vested in this. They made this decision.
In theory, should it do it?
I think they shouldn't have given it to them in the first place.
Go ahead with the game.
Well, you still haven't answered the question. What does it do now? Does it?
Now, listen, I'd love them to try to use the leverage to get some more freedom out of China. Maybe they could do that and pull this out of the fire.
I would attack the proposition that Bush is being there or not being there is not important because he's a lame duck anyway. So therefore, go forward with the Games, and the IOC just steps aside. When we come back, the Iraq War, is the end anywhere in sight?
As the world grows smaller, the ifs are now bigger than ever. If retirement savings can't keep pace with longer lives, if inflation sends the cost of employee benefits higher. For over 135 years, MetLife has provided insurance guarantees for life's many ifs. We have the experience, global resources, and vision to provide financial certainties for an uncertain world. No wonder more than 2/3 of the Fortune 500 choose us. After all, we are MetLife.
We know why we're here. To stand behind all who serve.
To deliver the technologies vital to freedom.
To help carry hope to those in need.
Around the globe, the people of Boeing are working together for what matters most.
That's why we're here.
Issue 2, all the time he needs.
General Petraeus says he'll need time to consolidate his forces and assess how this reduced American presence will affect conditions on the ground before making measured recommendations on further reductions. And I've told him he'll have all the time he needs.
Commander-in-Chief Bush signed off this week on Army General David Petraeus' plan to keep thousands of U.S. troops in Iraq indefinitely. The last of 20,000 surge troops will be out in 15 weeks. 140,000 U.S. troops will be left. 3 committees of Congress failed to get a straight answer from Petraeus on how long it will take to draw down any of the 140,000.
Are you giving us any ideas to how long that will take? You say over time.
Sir,
could that be a month?
It's when the conditions are met that we can make a recommendation for further reductions.
Could it be 3 months?
Sir, again, at the end of the period of consolidation and evaluation, it could be right then, or it could be longer.
Let's assume conditions permitted things to move quickly. What, in your estimate, would be the approximate number of American troops there at the end of the year? Can you give us just say if you can't give us an estimate.
Sir, I can't give you an estimate.
You're not going to give us an estimate on that.
Petraeus summed up where the U.S. stands now in Iraq.
I have repeatedly noted that we haven't turned any corners. We haven't seen any lights at the end of the tunnel. The champagne bottle's been pushed to the back of the refrigerator.
2 days later, President Bush, the commander-in-chief, gave a different reading of where the U.S. stands now in Iraq.
15 months ago, Americans were worried about the prospect of failure in Iraq. Today, thanks to the surge, we've renewed and revived the prospect of success.
Question. General Petraeus delivers grim news, and Mr. Bush paints a bright face on it. How do you explain this cognitive dissonance? Eleanor Clift.
Remember Baghdad Bob from the old days?
Well, who was he?
He was the information minister in Iraq who said everything was fine just as the bombs were falling. Well, this is Beltway George. Look, he's gotten his wish, and that is he's going to get to stay the course. Same number of troops that will extend to the end of his presidency, and he just dumps everything on whoever comes in next. The military leadership are practically in open rebellion against this president because of how this is affecting the military. The military is strained, overstretched. 52% of the West Point graduating class of 2002 left the minute they could get out. Right. And then you get into the money that this is your Republicans on your Republicans. Let me finish. Your Republicans in the Senate are beginning to break. Senator Voinovich in particular, looking at the sums of money this is costing, while the Iraqis have offshore accounts and a budget surplus.
All right, but let me just say
no
this.
sense anymore.
All right, but the president is right in this sense, and so is Petraeus. We were on the brink of defeat in 2006 and disaster, and we were looking into the abyss.
We still are.
That's no longer true. We have held off defeat, but Petraeus is right. We don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, but I'll tell you what's coming, John. Petraeus pointed right at the special groups supported by Iran as the main problem now. He said they're firing rockets into the green zone. They're responsible for Basra. The president said Iran better not make the wrong choice. We are looking at 140,000 troops here by the end of the year, and very possibly airstrikes on Iran before this fall.
This administration needs to get its stories straight. Petraeus gets up there and says, I have as long as I want to make this decision. I won't talk, I won't give Levin a straight answer. Bush comes out and says, I'm going to give this guy, this commander, as much time as he wants, thereby vacating his obligations as commander-in-chief. Secretary of Defense Gates comes out and says, oh, it's not unlimited. This is going to be a brief moment of assessment. And so does
So what is Congress going to do about it?
This is a mess. They have no idea what they're doing. They're just kicking the can.
What is clear now is that President Bush is going to get exactly what he wants, which is a significant and continuing troop presence on the ground in Iraq through the end of his presidency.
So someone else will clean up
that is an underrated achievement, a political achievement for President Bush. Remember, in 2006, his Democratic Congress came in on a withdrawal platform. Every time they have tried to force withdrawal, they have failed.
This is not about politics.
It is a strategic victory for the United States and a political victory for the president.
Do you think it's strategic from another point of view that Petraeus is painting this picture, which is somewhat grim in that summary, because he wants the option come September to withdraw. Now we know then after that he's going to have another period of reflection, and then he will withdraw in October. And October bumps up, of course, to that particular date called the election date.
Right.
So is this really a political, at root, a political contrivance to win the election? That is the withdrawal, scaling the withdrawal down to match the public need for conviction that the Iraq war is working. You follow me?
Yeah, I follow you. Then everybody is lying to the American public, which wouldn't be the first time.
Politicians lying?
No, well, it wouldn't be the first time in this administration now, would it?
Wait, you're saying politicians lie?
It doesn't help the Democrats that they keep changing the reason for their opposition to the war. First it was the security situation. When that came under control, then it was political progress. When that came under control, now it's the cost of the war. The Democrats cannot answer any of the
What about the proposition that it's a graduated withdrawal to slake the political appetite for withdrawal of troops from Iraq?
What you have pointed out is very, very possible politically, but where David is wrong, look, these fellows honestly, genuinely believe in their hearts that too rapid a withdrawal will lead to a strategic disaster, humanitarian catastrophe. They believe that. It's not all politics.
General Petraeus is properly focused only on Iraq. The rest of the military leaders are focused on the national security concerns and the amount of money and blood that we're pouring. How do you ask the last man to die for a mistake in Iraq? Let's repeat that from the Vietnam years.
Tough love time. The three senators vying to become the next commander-in-chief put their comments to General Petraeus.
How are we to judge General Petraeus, what the conditions are or should be, and the actions that you and the administration would recommend pursuing based on them?
The problem I have is if the definition of success is so high, no traces of al-Qaeda, and no possibility of reconstitution, a highly effective Iraqi government, a democratic, multi-ethnic, multi-sectarian, functioning democracy, no Iranian influence, at least not of the kind that we don't like, then that portends the possibility of us staying for 20 or 30 years.
Our goal, my goal, is an Iraq that no longer needs American troops. And I believe we can achieve that goal perhaps sooner than many imagine. But I also believe that the promise of withdrawal of our forces, regardless of the consequences, would constitute a failure of political and moral leadership.
Exit question. Let's assume that Iraq needs a dose of tough love, meaning bluntly told it must start standing on its own. Which of these three presidential contenders is the most likely to drive that tough love message home?
Obama's more likely than anybody to scuttle.
Obama asked the most penetrating question. Petraeus and Crocker talk about conditions-based decisions. He tried to elicit from them what are those conditions. He said if the American troops were not there today, would Iraq in this condition, which everybody is properly, I guess, describing as progress, is that what we would be satisfied with? He got no answer. And the fact that these people would go before the Congress that funds this venture and have no idea what the conditions would be to allow American troops to leave is a national shame.
Which one of those candidates could drive the tough love question home? to the Iraqis?
Look, Hillary and Obama have both said that when they become commander-in-chief, they will listen to the generals. The generals have warned them both privately and in public in this testimony against the kind of precipitous withdrawal that they're advocating on the campaign trail. Therefore, I think that John McCain, given his background, would understand the dynamics far better than either one of the other two.
Wait a second.
Go ahead.
Because McCain does not want this to be in vain, and he will pursue success.
John McCain has said that he's happy to be there for 100 years.
That's
hardly tough love. He will not be putting any pressure on Iraq.
The tough love lesson home the best?
Obama or Clinton, if they stick to their word.
Obama wants to give away the store.
No,
they don't. No,
it's talking about a precipitous withdrawal. They're talking about a
Obama.
140,000 guys out in 16 months?
Getting out more carefully.
They went in 3 weeks, Pat.
That's right.
They went in 3 weeks.
Well, but Obama will lose the war for the United States.
The answer is Hillary. Okay, the human toll. U.S. military dead in Iraq, 4,032. One half, 24 years of age and under. U.S. military amputated, wounded, severely injured, mentally ill, 92,615. Issue 3, Benedict the 16th stopped by.
In just a few days from now, I shall begin my apostolic visit to your beloved country. Before setting off, I would like to offer you a heartfelt greeting and an invitation to prayer.
It will be his first trip to the U.S. as Pope, his 6th to the U.S. overall. His 5 prior visits were as Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger. Benedict XVI arrives this Tuesday in Washington, D.C. for 6 days. On his visit, Benedict will remind America's Catholics, at 69 million, the 3rd largest Catholic flock in the world, that church doctrine is binding on them. That includes the Vatican's unyielding opposition to abortion, an incendiary issue in the U.S., especially, maybe, during this election year. Benedict's trip ends just 2 days before the Pennsylvania primary, a state where 1/3 of the population is Catholic. It's not the first time the church may have blundered into U.S. politics. In 2004, several Catholic bishops warned Democrat John Kerry that they would deny him Holy Communion, the Eucharist, one of the 7 sacraments, because Kerry, a Catholic, wanted to keep abortion legal. The Pope, who was then Cardinal, wrote a memo to U.S. bishops that appeared to back the anti-John Kerry bishops. Get this. George Bush, current president, and a Methodist gained more of the Catholic vote in the 2004 presidential election than did the Catholic John Kerry.
Question, is there a political angle to the Pontiff's visit? If so, what is his agenda, David Korn?
Well, I'm not sure it's outright politics. I think he's here to lay down the law, so to speak.
The Catholics?
The Catholics, and to sort of, to promote his global...
But the cafeteria Catholics today, they take what they want.
Well, that's right. He's going to have a hard time, I think, dealing with this. I mean, I think Americans tend to like popes in general. They like religious figures, and he'll be warmly welcomed. But listen...
Oh, wait a minute. That's a little bit...
No, you don't think so?
Well, I mean, he has a put-down of the intelligence and the perception of Catholics.
He has 58% approval rating, which is twice what Bush has. Bush would kill for his ratings.
Well, I think he's lost much of his flock in Europe, so he's coming here to tend the faithful. But look, I don't see this election turning on abortion issues and gay marriage. It's much more likely to turn on war and issues of poverty. And here's where the Pope can speak out and not sound like an honorary Republican.
But that's why I don't think he's going to hit the American people over the head with a sledgehammer. But there is a subtle political agenda here on 2 points. First, he's going to ground zero, so it will be a reminder of the terror inflicted by radical Islam. And the Pope has had some issues with the Muslim world. And secondly, it brings up the whole issue of life. Abortion, euthanasia. This week, Hillary Clinton announced that her admiration for the Oregon assisted suicide law. So, on the abortion issue and assisted suicide,
Here's where Benedict opposes the liberals on the question of abortion, stem cell research, homosexuality, women's priests, and birth control. Do you have any comments on any of those issues on the papal position, Pat?
Yeah.
First of all, do you share the Pope's position on all of those issues?
I share the Pope's position because the Pope's position is consistent with natural law and the laws of God on a number of those issues.
Are you against women priests? Is that part of the natural law? Is it part of the natural law?
No, but it is part of Catholic tradition, faith, and morals, which is binding as you used to know, John.
Birth control is against the natural law?
Birth control certainly is.
Condom is intrinsically evil?
It's in the Bible. Birth control, exactly. Artificial birth control, you read Aquinas.
Here is where the Pope differs with conservatives, all right? Put the list up on the board. The death penalty, he's against it, and his predecessor delivered an encyclical against it. Buchanan's for it. Poverty, he wants more funding. Climate change, he's a big believer in climate change. The UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, he's ready to campaign for it.
Vatican
and he is totally against preemptive
Vatican
war.
City.
The Pope is against preemptive war.
They were against, the Vatican was against the invasion of Iraq. I mean, it's not a simple thing.
You like the Pope?
Well, I like that Pope.
Are you going to convert to Catholicism?
Not today.
Are you going to convert, John? Are you going to convert? Vatican City had a death penalty. Vatican City had the death penalty until 1969.
And they said abortion was fine for a long time too, John.
Exit question. Will the papal visit have any effect on the Pennsylvania primary, yes or no? Pat Buchanan.
It'll increase turnout.
I would say John McLaughlin is closer to Catholic thought in America today than Pat Buchanan is.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Okay. No effect on the turnout in Pennsylvania.
No effect?
None.
What do you think?
Monica is right. Those Catholics in Pennsylvania will make their decisions on other criteria.
I think so, but he might galvanize the Catholic vote, increase it, and where that goes is anyone's question, right?
Maybe Republican.
We'll be right back with predictions.
The McLaughlin Group is brought to you by Grant Thornton. Find out how it feels to work with people who love what they do.
Please hold. Your call is very important to us.
Does it seem like getting technical advice from your accounting firm can, well, take some time? Why not talk to Grant Thornton? Easy access to partners has made them one of the largest accounting firms in the country. Grant Thornton. Feel what it's like to work with people who love what they do.
For people close to retirement, there are plenty of ifs to go around. If our savings will last, if we should take Social Security when we hit 62 or 67. MetLife can strengthen your retirement plan by providing a lifetime stream of income that's guaranteed and that works together with your investments, helping you create a safety net that promises Happy New Year's with guarantees for the if in life. Learn how MetLife can help you make the most of what you have in retirement.
Predictions, Pat.
50-50 chance of U.S. airstrikes on Iran by October.
A leadership post will be created for Hillary Clinton as a consolation prize if she does not get the nomination in the Senate.
Should take Ree's place?
No, I'm not going to go that
Monica?
far. No.
Colin Powell will bypass both John McCain and Hillary Clinton and endorse Barack Obama.
David.
Republicans have joined with Democrats in the Senate and House to oppose the strategic agreement that Bush is negotiating with Iraq.
What do you mean by that?
Well, as you know, they're trying to get a security agreement. Members of the House and Senate, Republicans and Democrats, are very upset about that.
I predict that President Bush will attend, as he said he would, the opening of the Beijing Olympics. Bye-bye.
Amen.